Hi, my name is EK and welcome to the video. Thanks for coming and I hope you enjoy. So today we are doing a monochromatic spread using alcohol markers, and like always I pick my references from Pinterest. I have already done the line work for the spread beforehand using the Copic multi-liners in the color of brown. The markers we are going to be using today are a mix of the Copic sketch markers and also the Copic chow markers. The colors we're using today are E11, color of barley beige, E13, color desert sand, E15, color dark suntan or earthenware, E08, color of brown, E07, color light mahogany, E09, color of burnt sienna, and the last one is E18, color of copper. When I do spreads like this, I like to use a light pencil to map out all the shadow edges as well as the highlights. It just helps with placement when I'm actually coloring the sketch. And I forgot to press record for this first one when I put down the base layer. But the base layer that I used was the E15, and when I do this I put down the base layer and then I use that same marker to build up on the shadows and then continue building up the shadows with all the other colors. The goal of spreads like this is to study the shadows and highlights and to study the process of bringing all of this to life using alcohol markers. For this next one, I used E11 as my base, and then I continued the same process of also mapping out the shadows, the highlights, and using that same marker to build up the shadows before going in with more of the other colors. Because the model is so fair-skinned, I don't have to use so much of the other colors, especially as dark as the other colors, in order to build up the shadows and bring in that depth. For drawing the hair, I went in with E18 and I just did, creating simple highlights in the hair. I'm not the best at drawing hair, and that is something I would like to improve on, but I think overall it turned out nice. For this next one, I was a little bit nervous, but I was also pretty excited and happy with how it turned out. So instead of having the shadows on the edges of the face and the highlights on the main and middle parts of the face, it was basically the other way around. So the shadows were on the middle and main parts of the face and the highlights were on the edges. I used E11 as my base, but I still did go over with E13 as well in order to bring out all that shadows in that middle part. Even though the model is fair-skinned, I still did use a lot of the colors at the end of the spectrum in that darker range because she is supposed to be casted in a lot of shadow. So this next one ended up being my favorite out of all of them just because of how good it turned out. So I did use E11 as my base, but like the last one, this model is casted in a lot of shadow, so I did go back in with E13 in order to create all that shadow. Even though the model was a bit fair tone, I did have to use a lot of the darker tone markers in order to create that shadow and depth because he was in so much shadow. This next one, I used E11 as my base and then followed the same process of using the same marker to build up my shadows before going in with all the other colors. I did like this reference because it had a lot of stark contrast and a lot of deep shadows as well, so I thought it was pretty cool. For this next one, I used E15 as my base, and I actually made a mistake during this. I accidentally colored over the left eye, so I used this colorless blender from a different set that I was just randomly gifted one time. And so this is basically straight alcohol, and it can be used to lighten or even lift a color completely, which is what I did here. After that, I went back in with the E15. The model in the reference had a bit of a darker skin tone, so I used 2 layers of the E15 as my base before going back in and adding in that shadow. I decided to color her headscarf with the same colors that were in the reference just to add a splash of color to the spread. And the colors I used were BG53 color of Ice Mint, BG57 color of Jasper, and BG72 color of Ice Ocean. So this is the final piece. I love how it turned out, and I love doing spreads like these. Thank you so much for watching and joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's totally free, and I hope to see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.